Welcome, everybody, to an all new live Beyond the Barricade podcast. I'm your host, Papa Dank. We are powered by StreamYard. For all your streaming needs, make sure you use StreamYard. Also, like to thank our sponsor, our local sponsor, Pro Brothers Custom Aesthetics. They provided the mics for the live streams as well. And I just want to plug something real quick. We have February 11th. Notorious from BPW featuring the Notorious Mimi, where you can see all your Victory Pro Wrestling stars at the Pro Game Athletics Arena in Bayshore, February 11th. Make sure you get your tickets at victoryprowrestling.com. I, of course, will be there. I have not missed a VPW show since ever. And I'll be filming Vlog Interaction at that show where you will see the one and only 23-6 YouTube Championship only on the Papa Dank Beyond the Barricade podcast channels. Next up, after the interview, we have Anthony Gangone coming up at 7. Make sure you stick around at 7 for that. Anyway, let me introduce my next guest, the one, the only, Unwilting Tatiana. Hi, Tatiana. How are you?
Hi. Thanks for having me. I'm
Thank you
good.
for
How
coming
about
on.
yourself?
Thank you for coming on the show. I know we got a little
Thank
delay
you for
going
having me.
on.
I'm excited to be here.
We got a little delay going on.
We do. Uh,
What are you going to do? It happens.
Looks like we might just have to. Yeah.
Let's start with the first question. How did you fall in love with this wacky, wonderful world of professional wrestling?
Well, actually started with my brother. There's this pretty significant age difference between my brother and I. So he was a teenager. I was a really little baby, and he was into the Attitude Era. So my love of wrestling really started just kind of wanting to hang out with him and wanting to do everything that he did. And then even when he sort of lost interest in wrestling, as some teenage boys do, I kept watching. I kept loving what I was seeing and wanting to be a part of it. And that carried all the way into college, where I eventually found people who introduced me to Quinn Magnum, who trained me.
Okay. That will lead to my next question. You were trained by who again? I didn't hear what you said.
Quinn Magnum.
Quinn Magnum. Where was that training at?
I was trained at the location at the time called Fight Society in McKeesport, PA. It was previously known as, and is once again known as, PWX, Wrestling Express.
Okay. And how was that first training you went? Like the first couple of months you did it? Were you like, oh man, I don't know if this is for me, or was it like, hey, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, it was more of the second. It was more like, oh, this is what I want. Like, this is kind of everything I was hoping it would be. I was a little worried once the physical aspect kicked in, which was early because bumps are one of the first things you learn how to do in wrestling.
Right.
I was worried that like, oh, I'm gonna wimp out. I'm gonna stop doing this, but I didn't. I fell in love even more. I was like, oh, I'm tough and I can do this. Let's go.
All right. Let's talk about your first match. What was it like your first match? How did you feel? What was going through your head? Who was your opponent? Stuff like that.
Ooh, okay, so I technically have two first matches. The first one I don't really count because it wasn't really a match. I didn't really do anything. It was just a little squash match where I was in a tag team and took a bump and then got pinned down at Black Diamond Wrestling. And it was against a team called OSHA Incorporated. So I was very nervous going into that because I was afraid that my costume would fall apart because it was old and it was an old leotard I had. But it wasn't too bad.
Right.
My first singles match, which is what I credit as my first match, was
Hmm.
against Charlie Cruel at Angel Gate Wrestling, which was held in McKeesport, PA. And I was, I think, everybody thought I had had like 16 cups of coffee that
Mm-hmm.
whole time before the match started. I was so
Right.
jittery and bouncy. I'd literally gotten the call the night before saying, "Hey, somebody pulled out. You're getting your first match tomorrow because we need you to fill in, and you can do this." And I was like,
Wow.
"Oh, okay." My dad's standing right there. I'm like, "Hey,
Uh-huh.
Dad, I'm having a match tomorrow." And he's like, "Do you have? Oh, okay, all right." But I was all
was,
jitters, nervous.
was your dad at your first match?
Gosh, I don't remember. I I honestly do not remember. Um, and that's so
Do you
terrible to say. But the
do you remember the first time he was at a match you were in? Like, how was that
um, hmm,
having your dad there to cheer you on?
that's what I'm trying to recall. The first year was a bit of those first couple of matches were a bit of a blur. But I think the first time that he and my mom ever saw me like wrestle live, I don't think it was that first match. I actually think it was when I was in Altoona, PA, wrestling for Eclipse Wrestling, and I was ecstatic. I was like, yes, they finally get to see me do this. They've
Right.
watched me bust my butt. They've watched how hard I've worked for this. Now they get to see me wrestle, and it's great. So I was at that point I had a couple more matches under my belt, and so I was a little bit
Uh-huh.
more confident. I was like, all right, let's put on a show. Let's go.
Right. Okay. Let's talk about your first tough opponent. Who was the first tough opponent you've had?
Ooh, that's a
And why was it
good
tough?
question. Hmm. I think my first. Well, I guess that all depends on what you consider to be tough. The first tough person I faced was Aiden Von England,
Mm-hmm.
back before he came out and was still using they them pronouns. He and I faced each other down at Extreme Valley Wrestling in Ohio, and he and his husband Sid were already
Mm-hmm.
experienced. They'd come over from the UK where they had a couple years of experience. They had already been
Mm-hmm.
wrestling in the US for about a year at that point, and I was less than 10 matches in, and I was like, okay. And was Aiden was so wonderful to work with. He was awesome. He combed my lips. We worked through a bunch of stuff, and what made him so tough to face was obviously there was a big experience difference between the two of us, but also I have always been a bit scrawny and a bit not so strong. And multiple times Aiden was like, hey, let me see if I can do this, and just whoop, picked me up without problem. And I was like, oh, okay. I might not need to jump at all tonight.
Right. That's awesome.
So,
What about your first toughest match you've had? And why was it so tough for you?
actually gonna pull up my match list because while my match with Aiden was definitely tough, it ended up, Aiden was definitely the first tough person I faced. Our match ended up like kind of flowing really smoothly. He and I have worked together a couple of times since then. It's always a fun time. Um, hmm. Ah, here we go. Facing another good friend of mine, Keith Hott at Poser
Okay.
Wrestling. That was my first tough match where I was like, oh, I'm okay. Time to toughen up. This feels real. Uh, Keith is a very, very dear friend of mine. We've actually turned into a tag team, Queen Side Quest, since then. but they did not go easy on me. They were like, "You got this, buddy," and then they let me up. And
Right.
uh, there was a couple of times in the match where I took moves from them, and my soul apparently shot out of my body as I took
Oh
the
man.
move. And
Oh
so
wow.
I think what made that one tough was just Keith has so much more experience than I do, and
Right.
they're very strong-handed. They do not pull back. They're like, "I'll take care of you, but I'm also gonna make it real." So,
Right.
which is great. It ended up working out great.
That's awesome. Tell me about an opponent you would like to face you haven't faced at all. And before we get into that, where do you usually
Ooh.
wrestle out of?
So I've been very fortunate the past year or so to be wrestling closer to home. I typically wrestle in New Kensington with T2T Pittsburgh, uh, and their wonderful punk shows.
Mhm.
Um, Either in Pittsburgh or some spots in Ohio and West Virginia. Really is where I typically circle. There's a lot of people that I have not yet gotten the chance to face that I want to step into the ring to. Want to step in the ring with. I
Right.
mean, um, someone that I uh, genuinely want to have a match with and put on a spectacle with, though, uh, is Ruby Soho.
Oh,
Since
okay.
she joined AEW and reinvented herself, she's just really
Right.
gotten the chance to showcase what an incredible wrestler she is.
Right.
I've heard nothing but positives about her, about people getting to work with her.
Right.
And that's a match I really want to have, but it's
Right.
something that I have to work for if I do truly want it. So
Right. Did you catch that match at Rampage with Ruby?
I caught some highlights of the match. I had a very busy weekend, unfortunately, so I did not get the chance to sit down and watch it in full. But I saw some of the pictures, and Ruby's a badass.
She is a badass.
That was
She was
definitely,
drenched.
but it was,
Drenched.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's something I like about AEW is that
Uh,
they let the women be as badass as the guys, and there's a lot of
absolutely.
promotions that I've dealt with where they're like, yeah, you can be tough, but keep it clean. And then to the guys, they're like, good job, boys. Whenever they come
Right.
back, all covered in blood.
Oh,
Not emotion, but there's been a few.
that's so passe. It just let you guys do what you gotta do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. The good news is that it feels as though the culture around women's wrestling has been steadily changing for the better. And
Right.
a lot more promoters are getting a little bit more comfortable with, okay, they know what they're doing to you. I'm just going to let them, everybody can go at it. Just nobody die.
Right. Right. Nobody died,
Just
please.
a very low bar set now that I think about it. But
Okay.
that might
What
not
what
be the best way to phrase the mindset.
what type of match would you like to be in that you haven't been
Hmm.
There's a lot of different types of
Ooh.
matches. And if you can't just pick one, you can
There
pick two.
are a lot of different.
You can pick as many as you
It's,
want, as a matter of fact.
I appreciate that. Um, I've hmm. I kind of there. Okay, there's actually two kinds of matches that stick out, and they kind of fall into the same vein of what kind of wrestling you typically see these in.
Mhm.
I would love to do a Falls Count Anywhere match someday because I love how creative people can get with like uh, where they go, where they finish, what all you can use, like how much of your surroundings you can use as weapons.
Mhm.
For instance, I was there one of the times that Sasha Banks, now Mercedes
Mercedes Monet.
Monet, defeated Charlotte for the title. Yeah. And I remember it was Falls Count Anywhere, and she put Charlotte through one of the railings, through one of the
Right.
gaps in the railings, and locked her submission in around it. And I thought that was so cool. That's what I was like, okay, I got to do this because that was awesome, and I want to do something like that. And the other one, this one I'm okay waiting on, just because I don't want to like just run in and have this kind of match with anybody, but I would eventually like to have a hardcore match, and
Okay.
or some kind of minor weapons match.
Gotcha. We got a comment for you. Max McBride says, "Hell in a Cell."
Oh, that
Whoa.
I don't know if that would be a good idea. My hair tends to fly all over the place. I feel like it would get stuck, and then I'm just stuck there. And oh gosh,
Talk about gruesome matches, huh?
yeah, oh
Yeah.
yeah. There's been some very good ones.
Let's talk about some of the things you like to do outside of wrestling. What are some of the hobbies you like to do?
Well, as a lot of people around the Pittsburgh area know, I'm an avid D&D player, big old Dungeons and Dragons nerd. I've got so many books and so many sets of dice. It might be a bit of a problem, actually.
Oh no.
But I also love just a little bit. You know, it's no biggie. Um, I'm also an avid reader. I have a ton of books, most of which I have not quite started yet. It's fine. It's fine. I'll get to them eventually. um, and I also paint on the side. I really love making art. So nerding out, reading, and painting. Those are my three go-tos.
Awesome. There's a Dungeons and Dragon movie coming up.
Yes, there is. It's coming out in March, and I have bothered a lot of people about seeing it with me.
Chris Pine is in it, right?
Mostly, yes, he is. Chris Pine is in it. There's a
I'm a
lot
big
of names.
I'm a big
Michelle
Star Trek guy,
Rodriguez
so
is
I
playing a
loved him in Star
barbarian,
Trek.
and that's such. Yeah, he did excellent in Star Trek.
He
I was
did.
very, very happily surprised.
We got a
I mostly
question.
bother people to go with me so that I don't shake a stranger's arm in the theater when something exciting happens.
All right, we got a question for you. Who's your favorite genre of books to read and your favorite author?
Ooh, that's a good question.
That's a question.
So
That's Serena.
I really love like fantasy novels. Realistic fantasy novels tend to be my favorite, where like there's magical elements sort of tied into real life, just because
Mhm.
I don't know, I just find it very interesting to like, how would we actually deal with this if we had that? And it's nice to see all the different spins on it. I don't really have a favorite author, but I find myself coming back to uh, oh, hang on, I got her book right here. Diana Wayne Jones, who wrote Howl's
Mhm.
Moving Castle, which is my favorite book and my favorite movie. So I find myself coming back to her work a lot.
Awesome. Thanks for the question, Serena. What are you a Game of Thrones person? Do you like Game of Thrones?
Uh, kind of. I like all of the. I love the fantasy aspect of it, and I love the costumes. Those are always so gorgeous. Um, the Game of Thrones main show didn't really do it for me, and I haven't gotten a chance to watch House of Dragon. So, but I am reading the House of Dragon novelization, reverse that, the novel that inspired House of the Dragon, and that has been a fun read so far.
Okay, I'm a big fan of both shows, but I just watched House of Dragon when it came out, and it was fantastic. Fantastic.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, different showrunners. It wasn't the same showrunners who did the original show.
Yeah, I think, to me, that kind of makes sense. Like, this is the history of Game of Thrones. You don't want to bring in the same people who might, they already know how this story ends way in the future. So you want to bring in fresh eyes who are like, okay, we do know how it ends, but like, let's see what happens
How did
here.
it begin?
Because not everybody knows this part. Yeah.
Right. It was very well done. I'm a big Funko collector, so I collected all the Funko Pops from
Very nice.
the new show, and I got one of them signed by the
Nice.
younger Rainier. So we got a question for you. Favorite documentary from Max
Ooh,
McBride.
that one's tough. That one's tough. I am not the biggest fan of documentaries, actually. I don't find it appealing. However, I did watch a documentary some time ago that I really enjoyed about the Pepsi fighter jet incident, where a
Oh,
young man and his boss basically bought enough Pepsi tokens to win a contest and get a fighter jet, and Pepsi was
right.
like, but we were kidding. And they were like, but your advertisement didn't state that. So, and
right.
I was like, oh, this is fun. I'm enjoying this.
Right. I saw it. It popped up on my Hulu feed, and I'm like, oh, I got to save that because I got to watch that. That looks interesting.
It's very good. It's very good.
Is it? Supposedly, they didn't get the jet.
I won't spoil it for you. It's
Okay.
I definitely have a different outlook on like Pepsi as a company now, though, because
All
like
right.
some other stuff that was brought up during that documentary, and I was like, oop,
Oh,
that's interesting.
awesome. We got
But
another
it's very
Serena
good.
question. How did you come up with the flower crowns? That's a good question.
So, um, I love making jokes every time like I get a new plant or I like buy something floral, like to the surprise of no one. And that's because the whole flower thing is just like an expansion of my actual personality.
Hmm.
I love florals. I love flowers. I have multiple plants in my home. I've got multiple like tapestries in my home that are covered in flowers. Just one you can kind of see behind me if you're watching the video feed.
Okay.
And so when I was trying to figure out how I wanted to sort of reinvent myself after coming back from injury, because I knew I couldn't just be, I'm just happy to be here, Tatiana Rose, which was my old name.
Right.
I thought about it and I was like, well, wait a second, I feel like I'm sitting on something. And so I started putting more emphasis on like flowers and asking people to make more flower puns and naming my finisher the crown of thorns. And I was like, okay, this feels right.
Right.
So the flower crowns, the floral jackets, the flowery gear, all of it just came from me just sort of dipping into what I already loved and just sort of using it to sort of strengthen myself. The flower crown that I've been wearing recently, I built myself. I started making my own and selling them to fans so that whenever I go to a place that I've been before, there's fans there, they've got flower crowns and they're like, hey, and I can tell who's going to be cheering for me.
That's awesome.
But
What kind of injury were you recovering from?
ooh, so this time, trying to remember. The reinvention happened after I broke my left elbow. There was an accident at training. Just had my arms stiff when they shouldn't have been, and boom. It happened August of 2020, so we were still very thick into the pandemic era. There still wasn't a lot happening, but wrestling was sort of coming back in like an underground sense. And I was because I was getting booked for a couple of shows and people were reaching out to me, and I was like, cool, I can get started and I can ride the same wave that everybody else is, where they get like some underground attention. And then I had to call off all my matches. I had to turn everybody down. And there's nothing else to do except go, all right, how do I come back and, make people pay attention to me?
Right. How long was that recovery?
It was, I think, about 3 months not being able to use my arm. And then it was about a year until I was like fully comfortable using my arm like as normal. It was healed up after the 3. It was just a matter of like, okay, now I got to get my strength back, and now I got to like shake off this hesitation that I have in the ring, so that I'm not, putting myself at risk again or putting my opponents at risk.
Right. A lot of the athletes I meet who have had injuries like that, they go through like a little depression during those times. Did you go through that, or were you trying to keep it upbeat?
No, I became very depressed.
Right.
I don't think I've actually gotten into it before. I just the elbow injury came about 2 months after I broke my left wrist, and the wrist only took a month to heal. And then I was back and I was going to training, and there was like all of this hype behind me because everybody was like, wow, she didn't let that get her down at all. Look at her go. And I felt so good about myself. And then boom, I was injured again. And it threw me into a rut of just self-doubt and just being sad all the time. It was hard.
Definitely. What kind of advice can you give any athletes now that are going through something similar that you went through? What would be your best advice to them?
Even if it doesn't feel like it, wrestling is never going to go anywhere. So there is nothing wrong with taking all of the time that you possibly need to make yourself better, to make yourself stronger, to make yourself as healthy as possible. Nobody wants you running in there when you're not ready just because you think that you're going to lose your spot.
Right.
There will always be a spot for you. You just need to take care of yourself first, so that when you take that spot, it's the best version of you taking that spot, because that will stick out more than running back in when you're not ready.
Right. I think that's great advice. We have another question for you. If you could have a match with a historical figure, who would it be and why? So, Max, what do you mean, like George Washington or wrestling legend?
I mean, if we're throwing political figures in here, I would like to go toe to toe with Ronald Reagan and beat that man to a pulp. But if we mean wrestling historical figures, I would love to square up. I would love to have squared up with Bruno Sammartino. I doubt that he.
No, that's Max's question. Yeah, he is.
Gotcha. I would love to square up with Bruno Sammartino. In retrospect, I don't see him as the type of wrestler in his. just to be like, oh yeah, I'll have a fight with a lady, no problem. I don't see him as being that type of gentleman, but like even if it was just practice sparring, I feel like there there was so much to learn from him. He wrestled for so long, he went so many places, he did so many things. That's just an experience I'd like to have. But now
Max,
that I can see Max clarified, I meant any historical figure.
right?
Somebody lace out that Ronald Reagan because I'm.
Not necessarily right. That's a like a really out there kind of question, Max. I like it though. I like it. That's a good question, Max.
I do.
Ronald
I
Reagan,
do
hey,
too.
what can you do?
Listen, that man is the reason I have student loans. So, yeah,
Oh,
square and a half.
how about well, let's go to Max's previous comment. How about a Hell in the Cell with Reagan?
Yeah, you know what? I'll take that.
That's right.
I'll take that.
Let's talk about an event you're going to be at on January 28th, where you will be
Oh, yes,
defending
WWE.
your title. Which which champion are you for that promotion? And talk about your
So
opponent.
I am the WD. Oh, sorry, didn't mean to off there.
No, no, it's cool.
So I
Cool.
am the WDWA women's champion, defending my belt for the first time against the former champion, Kenzie James. She and I had one hell of a match last year, where I got the title from her, and so I'm looking forward to this rematch. But I'm
I,
not planning on letting her go home with the belt.
I've heard of
I think she had it for long enough.
Casey
It's my
James.
turn.
I've heard of her. Any
Uh,
plans to?
she's she's tough.
She's tough. I heard she's tough. Any plans to come outside of PA? Like, have you been like trying to solicit other promotions, or if any promotion is watching, anything you would has caught your eye?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I've reached out to multiple promotions. Uh, I'm going to be reaching out to more promotions this week. I'd love to go out to New York this year. I'd love to go out to more Western, just maybe like California or Washington. You know, a lot
Okay,
in the East.
we got Mission Pro Wrestling out there.
Um, but yeah, a couple of promotions, and I am more than happy to reach out to more. I got the privilege of hopping along in a car to Chicago, and I got
Hmm.
the opportunity to wrestle for a promotion out there. And I can't talk about it right now because that footage has not quite been released yet. So I gotta
Gotcha.
stay
Keep it
quiet
quiet.
about the specifics for the moment. It was a good time though.
Good, good. I'm from Long Island, New York, and we got some promotions out here.
Yes, I've been in talks with a company out in Long Island. You were actually promoting their upcoming show with Notorious Mimi earlier.
Yes, Victory Pro Wrestling. That's the one I
Yeah,
usually work out
VPW.
of.
That's oh wonderful. I've been
Yeah,
in talks with them. I'm hoping to go out and work with them this year.
awesome. We'd love to have you there. That'd be awesome. I can meet you in person.
Yeah, for sure.
That's right. Maybe you too will try for that. My channel's 23-6 title. You never know.
Hey, hey, I
it, it's anybody
I'm
can
always
win it.
happy to fight for a belt.
Anybody can win it as
That's
long
good
as
to
you
know.
pin the champion.
It's very good to know.
Very good to know. We got more questions for you. Oops, I'm slacking over here. Max has got another question. Are you a Steelers fan?
No,
That's a no.
no. Born and raised in Pittsburgh, and I was raised a Pirates fan, and Steelers fans used to pick on me. So I just distanced myself from football, and now I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm sorry.
Gotcha. I see Tatiana retraining. You got this, champ.
Oh, thank you.
Serena's got your back. Serena's my executive booker. Oh, there's the 23-6 champ right now. Ryan Dust, aka the solution. I don't know.
Oh, hi, Ryan. How about
He's
you and
very
I have a chat?
he's very sneaky, that guy. Watch your back. Watch your back. All right, Tatiana. Besides the January 28th event, what else you have coming up?
Let's see. On February 4th, I am having my hopefully last match against X. We are currently 1-1, so it's time for me to put her in her place. But that'll be with Desire Pro Wrestling in Zanesville, Ohio. I pulled up the wrong thing to look at my upcoming match list. Then February 11th, I will be back at WDWA, hopefully defending the belt again. And if not, I'll be taking the belt back. Max will be there on the 4th. Heck yeah.
All right, Max. Support indie wrestling, the heartbeat of America, as I like to put it. But go ahead.
And then February 17th, there will be another punk show in New Kensington for T2, hosted by T2T Pittsburgh. And then that's pretty much it until late March. I'm still got dates that are filling up. I still got places I want to ride along to, and get my name out there. So,
Right.
but we got some fun stuff coming up.
That's awesome. Hey, I'd like to appreciate you for coming on the podcast. I want to plug away that next appearance, January 28th, up in Winchester Avenue, Martinsburg, Wyoming. Did I get it right?
West Virginia.
West Virginia. I don't know my abbreviations. I don't get out much outside of New York, Tatiana. Make sure if you're in the vicinity, you check out that match with Tatiana, which I see you retaining as well. So, you know what I'm saying? You got this.
Thank you.
Please also make sure you check out
I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem. Please also check out The Ballad of Gia and Frankie, A Journey of Hope and Destruction. It is a wrestling documentary by wrestler Gia Savitz, who was on the other day. Make sure you support anything indie wrestling, especially this documentary. It's important that we get this out and people see this film and continue the love that we all have of pro wrestling. It's very near and dear to my heart as well. I'm sure Tatiana agrees with that sentiment. Also, don't forget to get your tickets for Notorious. BPW is coming back in the new year, February 11th, Saturday night. Please get your tickets at victoryprowrestling.com. Get your tickets. Come see the stars of BPW featuring Notorious Mimi. We have Jack Tomlinson, who is fighting current champ Mike Anthony. Mike took the belt from Jack at the last show. We have Brother Greatness, Eric James, the frat star Dante Drago, the red hot indie sensation Desmond Cole, who I just saw last night at Remarkable Wrestling out here, and VPW Women's Champ Valentina. Hey, there could be another title for you.
Could be.
Could be. I don't know if you ever met Valentina, but she's always in the New Jersey
but I have
area.
met Mimi.
You have met Mimi. Have you wrestled her?
Yes.
Oh, before we head out, I want to hear about this match. How was that match?
Oh gosh. So this match was, I believe, in the beginning of 2020, either 2020 or 2021. It's been a minute. But we faced each other at Real Shoot Wrestling, which is also based in West Virginia. She was the RSW Women's Champion, and it was a title match.
Mm-hmm.
We had a nice, solid match. It wasn't too bad. And then we never saw each other again. So,
Who
but
knows?
it was a good match.
You never know. You could bump into her. Max says, my friend Trey and I worked on your promo for Danny Jax together. Okay.
Oh, it's a good promo. I can't wait for everybody to see it.
Okay. I know you can't talk about certain things, so we won't bring it up. But hopefully, you'll come back on later on, maybe this summer, and we'll be able to talk about a lot of other things.
For sure. I'd love to come back.
For sure. I'd love to have you back. Thank you, Tatiana, for coming on the show. We appreciate your time. And thank you very much.
Thank you
I'm
so
sure
much for having me.
Serena has been reaching out to you. She's my executive booker. So thank you to Serena for getting Tatiana on the show. She does a lot behind the scenes, and I want to give her a quick shout out because, well, she just deserves it. Thank you, Serena. Thank you, Tatiana. Make sure you check her out if you're in the West Virginia area. And please follow Tatiana on where, Tatiana? Where can everybody follow you?
So everybody can follow me on Facebook, The Unwilting Tatiana, on Twitter and Instagram, at Tatiana Wrestles. I also have a YouTube channel. You can look me up under Tatiana the Wrestler or by looking up my name in the search bar. I've got a full playlist with all of my free available shows listed on my channel. So if you want to check out my past work, you can find it there.
The current 23-6 title tells you to have a good night. I know he might be a little threatened.
Thanks.
He might be a little threatened. Make sure you stay
good.
Make sure you stay tuned at 7 o'clock. I have Anthony Gangone coming back. Dr. Sleep himself will be here a little bit later on tonight. Tatiana, thank you for coming on. Appreciate you. Hopefully we'll see you this summer. Or maybe sooner. I might see you at VPW. Who knows?
Hopefully.
Everybody, thank you and have a great night. We'll see you up at 7 o'clock. Any parting words, Tatiana?
Keep calm and bloom on.
Keep calm and bloom on. I like that. All right, guys, stay tuned.